Welcome back to the Real Estate Talk podcast with myself, Oliver Ingles, and my esteemed co-host, Benji Weinberger. On this podcast, we give you all the nuggets, the hints, the tips, which dive into the prime and super prime real estate market. If you gain anything from this podcast, we would love for you to like, subscribe, and share. We want to make this huge for you and give you the best guests going forward.
There was also lots of rumours about Drake and Chris Brown buying from me and buying that house, which I can't confirm.
Any truth?
I can't confirm or deny. Can't confirm or deny that one, my friend. I can't tell you why I got expelled from sixth form. That's another story.
You got expelled twice?
Twice. But I can tell you why I got expelled from primary school, and that was just fighting and backtalk. I didn't go to uni, I went straight into work and I was renting rooms in house shares. My commission was about £20 per unit, pre-tax.
Wow.
Comprehend that, pre-tax. You can't even get a pint for that now, like pre-tax. Like when I did my big trade last year, I left a family holiday 3 days early to go and do the final, close.
Yeah.
I've got very severe ADHD. Anyone that knows about ADHD, they grade it in 4 forms out of 9. I have 3 9s and an 8.
Grant J. Bates, the coolest agent by living, the superstar agent by the Financial Times, one of the best negotiators by the Times, recently one of the most followed agents in Europe on Instagram.
Grant has recently been a guest speaker at private banks. He's one of the youngest top agents in the UK. He's recently closed a £60 million sale, and he is the head of the private office at Hamptons International.
Let's go.
Right, so Grant, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. You should be honoured you're our first guest on our new podcast.
Thank you.
So we've given a bit of an overview about who you are, where you work, some of the big deals you've done. Just give us a little snapshot, who you are, just so the listeners know from you.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to be your first guest. I feel honoured. And my name is Grant J. Bates. The J is very important. At Grant J. Bates on that one. Also
10 seconds in and he's
yeah,
already
10
given
seconds.
a shameless plug.
Got to keep the plugs going. And I run the private office. I'm head of private office London for Hamptons, which means I look after all of our ultra high net worth individuals, typically with portfolio or single asset values north of £7.5 million.
Ollie and I'm sure you do as well. We have a lot of people that reach out to us to say, how do we get to where you are? How do we sell the most expensive homes in London, which obviously you do? What do you say to them?
What I try and do first of all is manage their expectations, because there is an assumption, and I don't know if it's a generational thing or if I sound like a really old man saying that, or if it's just the amount of visibility agency has now, but it's not quick. It's not short-term gratification. You know, you are in this for the long haul. I started at 16. I worked for a very long time. I'm 38 now to get where I am. So first of all, I manage those expectations so they know it's not a quick fix. And then secondly, I would tell them 2 things. I tell them to be themselves and to manage the metrics they can. So what I mean by be themselves is if they're charming, be charming. If they're funny, be funny. If they're analytical, be analytical. Don't try and be something you're not. Just play to your strengths and develop your weaknesses in the background. If you can find a mentor as well, great, but be very careful, particularly with social media, who you choose to be a mentor. So make sure it's someone that's respected by others. Make sure you are presentable, you articulate yourself well, you're on time, all of the things that don't require experience, because you don't have experience. So don't pretend you do. If you don't know the answer to something, say you don't know the answer. Your experience and your skill set come later. So just focus on those metrics you can control and that are universally accepted as positives.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer.
Yeah, I love that. And you touched on the quick wins. I think I've spoken to other people about it before in terms of like the Amazon economy where you order something and it's there that afternoon. I mean, between the 3 of us, we've all been in industry 10, 15 years. It takes time.
Yeah.
And, you know, necessarily they don't want to hear that, but that's just the truth.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I started my career and I promise you this is accurate. I know it sounds conveniently contrived rags to riches, but I started renting rooms in house shares. I didn't go to uni. I went straight into work and I was renting rooms in house shares. My commission was about £20 per unit pre-tax.
Wow.
Comprehend that, pre-tax. You can't even get a pint for that now, like pre-tax. And I didn't drive either. So the guy took a bit of a chance on me. I had a skinhead as well. I like a proper, and at 18, that's aggressive, you know? So I don't know how he took a chance on me, but he did. And I remember walking to appointments because I didn't have a car, and the bus fare, I used to try and get on for 40p. They always said no. So it was 70p. So that was like 10% of my commission. So I used to walk to appointments. Like, it is a slog. Like, work ethic will be your only differentiator. And I don't think that's exclusive to real estate. I think that's life. Across the board. That's just life.
Yeah, I love that.
You're not going to turn up and sell a £50 million house tomorrow.
Okay, right. I want to strip it back. All right. Grant J. Bates, growing up.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know where you went to school, what your parents were like, what was schooling like, what did you want to be? Like, let's start from the start.
Fine. So I'm glad you remembered the J, first of all. Very, very important. Grant J. Bates, at Grant J. Bates on all socials. So yeah, school was good. I was studious. I was never well behaved. I went to a Church of England school for primary school. My mum worked very hard to get me into that school. I had the vicar around for dinner, went to church. She wasn't religious, but got me into the school. I then got expelled very quickly.
Oh,
why? Can you say why?
I can't tell you why I got expelled from sixth form. That's another story.
You got expelled twice?
Twice. But I can tell you why I got expelled from primary school. And that was just fighting and back talk, basically. I was probably very cocky in certain situations. I think I've got more humble as I've got older, and just didn't fly. So I got expelled from Church of England. I blame my mum, to be honest. Don't put me in a Church of England school. You knew what you had. Don't try and pretend that I was any better than anyway. So then they moved me to a state primary school where I did actually quite well. I actually got to do the advanced stats. You know, I didn't get the 7 though, but my intellect drained as I got older. And then secondary school, I went to a school called Norfolk High School, which wasn't great. Sorry to anyone that goes there now, but it did go into special measures. It wasn't the best school, but I had a nice group of friends, which really helped. And I was studious, but as I say, not well behaved. So I came out with good grades. I got 6 A's, 4 B's, and a U at GCSE.
Okay. What was the U in?
The U was in RE, Church of England School, RE. I was rebelling. And I always wanted to be a barrister. So I was planning to go do that. And I got accepted to Southampton Uni. This was after A-levels. Skip that one out. Got 3 B's at A-level. And literally like a week before I was meant to go, I just decided not to go.
Did you really? Wow.
Yeah, I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to study anymore. I wanted to earn money. You know, my dad was fuming, absolutely fuming.
Interesting, yeah.
Caveat being my mum and dad were lovely people, still are, like really loving, very old school mum and dad, you know, like just covered me with love all the time, always supported me. My dad really taught me work ethic. So when he was fuming, I needed to decide what I wanted to do. And, you know, I guess cocky, charming, there's a fine line, but I felt like I had that. I could get on with people. Most people liked me. Some people hated me, but most people liked me. And I'd acted in school. I was like Artful Dodger and Oliver Twist. I did the classic like 3 CDs for a tenner from LimeWire. So I was like, you know, I was a bit of a hustler. Shout out LimeWire. And
not a paid ad.
Do they even exist anymore?
I don't
and
think
Napster. I mean, that's old school.
Napster,
Anyway, so then
MySpace.
MySpace, classic. I remember doing my statuses with like a mixture of capital letters and like normal letters, like thinking I was really cool. Yeah, like Amy broke my heart, like, hashtag I'll be okay, whatever.
Brilliant.
And obviously now I've lost my train of thought. But then so decided not to, because you had to get a job. I was working in like McDonald's, like golf ranges. I was the guy, you know, when you go to the golf range and you push the little cart that picks up the balls. That was me.
That was you.
Wow. So listen, if you were ever hitting balls in Northolt at the golf course there,
aiming
that was
for
me.
you.
Aiming
for me. But I used to get annoyed because like the tractor man always came late, so we had to do so much more. Anyway, so McDonald's, golf range. I sold women's shoes for a while, Brentano shoes. In Westway Cross. It's not there anymore. What else did I do? There was one other job. Anyway,
I just want to say it's interesting because we spoke about on the last podcast where we said schooling back in our decade generation was, you do your grades, you go to university.
Yeah.
That was kind of like it.
Yeah,
they didn't really give you options.
Yeah.
And I get the whole, like, I dropped out of university after 6 months, and I had the same thing from my parents.
Yeah.
You think you're a bit of a failure at the time.
Once you've gone as well.
And once you've gone, you've got. And that's the hardest thing, when you start to think, are my parents thinking I'm a failure? Am I not, and that's like super hard as a young person.
Yeah, for sure.
So we get that. But then tell us how then you wanted to get into a state agency. Like, you're working at McDonald's, what happened?
Sorry, we went off tangent a bit there. Yeah, but so I had like these what I would say were assets, like charm, you know, decent at acting, not that you actually always tell the truth, and et cetera. And it was actually my nan, God bless Nanny Bates, rest in peace. She bought a book which genuinely was like called, maybe slight artistic license with the title, but it was like called like Big Book of Careers or something. I don't know. And then like sandwiched between environmental officer and something else, there was a state agent, like this like beacon of hope there. I thought, yes, I will do that. I also really fancied someone called Lydia that worked at McDonald's.
Does your wife know about this?
She does, yeah. She's fine with it. I bet she's still absolute fire, Lydia.
Have you ever tried to find Lydia?
Oh, no, that'd be a bit stalking, wouldn't it?
But yeah, I have.
Yeah, just know, Lydia, this is what you could have had. Right? This is what you could have won. And I wanted to impress her, and I wanted to earn money, and then combining that with my skill set and my nan's book, I stumbled across a estate agent, and it didn't need a degree, which was immediately low barriers to entry. You got a company car, although I couldn't drive when I first started, and you wore a suit, which to me was like instantly made it feel. If I saw some of those suits now, I'd probably be like, oh my God, what was I wearing? But it made it feel legit. So I dived into it, and work ethic, as I say, that's what saw me through, really. That was the differentiator.
How did you find that first job? Like, how did that even come
genuinely,
about?
this is good, actually. Partly because of my dad, who was fuming, as I said earlier. I drafted up a CV, wasn't much on it, apart from my grades. I bought a suit from Top Man. Yeah. £99, remember when they did those? And you could buy like the shirt and tie
skinny tie, or whatever it was.
And it came in a pack, so you could like, that would all match.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I put that on. I had a skinhead, which wasn't ideal for the suit look, like at 18. Don't know why I'm doing that. And I just marched up and down like different high streets and just handed in my CV. And eventually a couple of them called me back. And then, he took a chance on me. Elliot Lee was the first firm that I worked for. But
Love that.
And that's why even to this day, when I was more in an office, like we're everywhere now, right? You're very rarely sat behind a desk.
Yeah.
But when I used to work in an office in Islington, whenever someone had the courage to do that when they were young, I'd always give them an interview.
Love that.
Always. Because I was like,
you've been there yourself.
I remember being I can't tell you the nerves.
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to pass out, just walking in to give them a CV.
I mean, I think that shows massive character.
Yeah.
So many people that we speak to sometimes, and we've all spoken to the younger generation, they kind of like sat there and they'll send someone an email. And we know what happens with emails. Now people just delete them and they go past. Whereas someone walking in through that front door who's like 17, 18, probably scared shitless.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Of like what they're about to walk into. That shows character.
Yeah.
I'd love that now.
Yeah. I really think so. It shows that they care. I know we're going off a bit here, but it's the same in interviews. Like, it obviously depends what position you're interviewing for. But if you're interviewing for a relatively junior position, I love to see some nerves.
Yeah.
I love it. I love not in a sadistic way at all, just clarify that. I like to see that they're nervous and they care. And I always tell this story about a guy who I don't think will mind me saying this because he's been very successful, a guy called Charlie Moxham, who I employed at Islington. And just to give you an idea, this Islington office I ran, we did, slightly crass, I know, but it will make sense to the estate agents. We banked £6 million in our last year from one office, last year that I was there. And Charlie did 2 million of that. And he's now in Dubai doing brilliant things. I won't plug the company he was working for, but his new one, I'll remember, and I'll tell you to add it in the caption. He did £2 million in his last year with me. And his interview was the worst interview I have ever
why? Tell us
why.
Tell people why.
As in, I say worst. I'm being dramatic here. I'm going to get to my point, but worst in the sense that his answers to some of the competency questions were terrible.
Yeah.
But I could tell it was because he was so nervous.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't a lack of ability. I could, and that for me, and then that coupled with a few things he said. He used to be in the police as well, which instantly to me shows like courage and work ethic. And I remember sitting there with Eloise, not Lydia, at home, and I was like, do I take a chance? Like, I can't work out if I should give this guy a chance.
Yeah.
And I gave him a chance, and my God, like,
Best decision you made.
Unbelievable.
Brilliant.
So it just goes to show, I think, yeah, like if a bit of nerves, like coming, you know, all those sorts of things, which I don't know. I mean, maybe I sound like an old man again, but I don't do young people do that anymore? I don't know. But if they do,
it's a great way to get into
it. They need to think about the
100%.
generation they're pitching to, regardless of if it's standard. If they're pitching to people like us, then do that, you know, because it will go miles.
100%.
I remember I had an interview when I was before I joined KF. It was 15 minutes. My boss said, you got 3 months. If it works out, you got it. If not, you don't. But I think when I was at uni, I was, we didn't phone people. We didn't make phone calls. It was just WhatsApp, text. So I was like, I think I was the last generation who really just about picked up the phone. Like even now, I don't really like picking up the phone. I think the generation beneath us, for them to walk into an office with a CV.
Feels weird and daunting. Yeah.
They're not going to do it.
Yeah.
It will be DM and that's it.
I think you have to, it's the same as us, right? If I know Ollie's less of a fan of this word, but if we're pitching for like a business, if we're pitching for business or a mandate, you've got to think to some degree, who are you speaking to and who are you pitching to? Down to your pitch, your attire, everything. You know, like if you're going to see an 85-year-old man that owns a big estate, you're probably going to wear a suit and a tie just to be respectful to what he would expect from his or her or their generation.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going to meet a crypto billionaire or a 25-year-old tech vendor client, you probably wouldn't go in a suit. Yeah. And yes, there's an element of manipulation and maybe slightly contrived there, but you need to think about that. You need to think about who are you pitching to? Who do you
100%.
want to do this job?
Massively.
So Ollie obviously asked, stripping it back to where you have come from. Let's fast forward to where you are now, which is in a fantastic seat. You know, you're running the private office at Hamptons, doing some of the biggest deals in London. People look up to you. Like, I think it's amazing what you've built. What would you say to younger people? I know we've touched on work ethic and being smart, but what would you say is the thing that's got you to this seat where you are now?
I mean, it's really repetition, honestly. Like, I really believe it is work ethic. And then there's a few cliches that go with that, in that I believe you make your own luck. I really, really believe that, because the amount of opportunities that have come to me from sources that I would have never expected. And in that instant moment, you would be forgiven for saying that was complete luck. But there are too many of those occasions for it to be luck. Yeah. And I think the harder you're working and the more consistent you're staying and the more networking you're doing, the more opportunities you're going to get. But honestly, I would say in our industry, it's insane that this is a USP, but I would say just being a nice person and a straight up person, will, because of the connotations with our industry, will let you go so far. And I think particularly if you're starting out in agency, you need to remember that your brand, your personal brand, if you do anything to tarnish that, it is tarnished for life. You're not getting away from that. And we all know agents in our industry that have a less than favorable rep, and they're not getting away from that. Even if from tomorrow they start being the loveliest person to deal with, they're always going to have that reputation. Yeah. So I think it's also about being nice. But as my very first MD said to me, never mistake that kindness for weakness. Yeah. So I think it's about being nice. It's about being humble. It's about working hard. And it's about being respectful and trying to balance, no matter how successful you get, trying to stay grounded and humble and not, getting to the point where you can't fit your head through the doors you're walking in. Yeah, yeah.
And so you touched then on brand, which obviously is really important. And, going down the route, which I know something that's really important to you is social media. Yeah. Now, I've come from a corporate background, and there are certain companies that don't endorse and don't support agents in their social media ventures because they don't want the individual to become too big. Now, obviously, Hamptons have supported you in that. And I think you corrected me before, you're on 381,000 followers. Every 1,000 is really important. Tell us a bit about the journey with Hamptons and, the brand that you're building.
So journey with Hamptons, I mean, the truth is, and I don't think they'll mind me saying this, they didn't support it at the start. And I think it was new to a lot of agencies at the start. You know, it was rife in America, but in the UK, stiff upper lip. This isn't how we do business. You know, you're breaking a status quo. They weren't that supportive. And I took the view, I've always thought I'm a bit of a maverick, and in some senses, and I just took the view that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. My wife will tell you I follow that rule quite a lot in life. Like when I came back with a 911.
I wasn't sure what you were going to say when you came back.
Came back with a new car, and she was like, "What is going on?"
Get
like, impulse. I was there. I had to do it. So yeah, they weren't that supportive to begin with. I had a boss at the time called Dan O'Brien, who now runs a company called Acoot. He supported me. He went to the up the food chain, as you have to do in a corporate, and backed me, and took a bit of a risk, actually. And I don't know how much I can say on that, so I'll leave that there. But you know, I think he fell a little bit into that bracket of forgiveness rather than permission. Yeah. And I think when they could see that it was bringing tangible business, they were much more supportive. So I used to document it at the start, you know, the business that was coming in via DM and everything else. And then once they could see the business coming in, they started to really support it. But it is really rare, because a corporate agency in general don't want your brand to get bigger than the company brand. But I just tend to believe that, you know, regardless of how important a corporate brand is, or a brand behind you is, I think, as you guys in the position you're in with DDRE will probably testify to, the personal brand is as important. Because a lot of the time the clients are instructing you for you, they're not instructing you for your brand. Like if you upped and left tomorrow and went to another brand, your clients would go with you. And I think with Hamptons, they probably know that there's a risk there, but they also can see that the value that they get from my brand.
Super interesting. I mean, look, we're obviously massive advocates of it. You know, this whole industrial revolution has now passed, and we're now in the digital revolution. And we obviously are always trying to push people to start growing their digital brands. And everyone's sat there at home now whilst they're listening to this going, but where do I start? Like, how do I do it? And some people who have are keeping going, but they're only getting 600, 700, 800 followers. When did it start for you? And how did it start at the beginning? And when did you start to see that kind of snowball effect taking place?
Well, I think the first thing is feel the fear and do it anyway. Susan Jeffers' amazing book. That's the route you have to follow if you're going to do anything like social media. And you've got to just keep, again, it's consistency. It's the same formula for everything in life, I promise you. And it started like it starts for everyone. It was literally just a post. It was no traction. It was, you know, putting your heart and soul into a video, and then someone calling you a bald twat in the comments, and you being like,
user 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 no profile.
Do you know what I mean? Led to a hair transplant. Thank you. Whoever said that. So yeah, look, you have to deal with all of that, and you have to get past it, and you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's really is the only way you're going to build success. And I think, what was the turning point for me? I think when I probably really started noticing the business coming from it was probably 10,000 followers and north, there or thereabouts. I remember being really proud when I got to 10,000. But that said, you know, I've got friends and colleagues that have 5,000 followers and get leads from it. So it's almost like your audience is who the audience are as important as the number a lot of the time, right? It's just about having your name mentioned in rooms you're not in. It's a quote I said at my talk in Coots and posted yesterday, but I so believe that is the reason for personal brand. And there were probably two moments, I guess, when I realized A, the personal brand was working, and B, I was successful. And success is obviously relative, right? It's subjective. I thought I was successful when I let a room in a house, and I thought I was successful when I could rent full houses, and you know, it changes as you go. But it was probably when I sold the place in Hackney at 9.15 million, and I think the optics of that, the shock optics were powerful because it was Hackney and it was a big price, and people had their own view on what they would spend in Hackney. And there was also lots of rumors about Drake and Chris Brown buying from me and buying that house, which I can't confirm.
Any truth?
I can't confirm or deny. Can't confirm or deny that one, my friend. So that probably put me on the map, I would say, in terms of that space.
So that was the moment that you perhaps realized, because you're saying before how you when you went from renting rooms to apartments, was that the moment that you were like, not in a, I guess in a modest way, like I've made it?
I think so. And it was more on the personal brand because that all came from Instagram.
Yeah.
The instruction came from Instagram. The buyer came from Instagram. And, you know, I mean, my biggest sale in my career came from Instagram.
Yeah.
So it works.
Wow.
And I always find it funny when brands, you know, you can think of the brands I'm talking about that you're pitching against, and you hear from the vendor that they've said, oh, you know, social media doesn't work. You know, it's an ego trip for the agent. And I always say back to the client, I say, but do they have a Instagram page? Oh, they do have it. So they're trying to grow their following while criticizing my following. Okay, right, fine. Yeah. So I think it's, you know, anyone doubting the importance of it is insane. It led to me, you know, I put a post on this yesterday. I was guest speaker at Coots in November. I remember telling you when I saw you before, like how nervous I was about that opportunity. Instagram. Yeah. Literally, like a senior leadership in the bank DM'd me and was like, your tunes are banging or something, he said. And I was like, and we started talking about music, and then he invited me in. Same thing, and I won't name names, but same thing, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, all of them have had me into for meetings, to pitch, to speak, all from Instagram.
And it's super interesting because that guy reached out because he loved your music.
Yeah.
And what we obviously find in personal brands a lot is that sometimes it's not just the sexy properties that we're in.
No, yeah.
You know, it's like I get a lot of things about my son. You know, I had a lady on the Marylebone High Street stop me one day and she taps me on the shoulder and she says, look, you don't know me. I'll follow you on Instagram. Your son's incredibly cute.
That's so cool.
You know, and a lot of people follow you for who you are.
Yeah.
Not just the estate agent.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you did a 5 a.m. club and you know,
I tell you
love you for that.
One sweeping tip I can give you with content
Go on.
is educate, inspire, entertain. If it doesn't do any of those three things, think twice about posting it, with the one caveat of reality TV in the sense that reality TV is popular because it's raw, it's unedited, it's edited, but you know, it's fly on the wall vibes. Yeah. And that is what people want to see. Like if they've bought into you, they want to see your day-to-day life. I remember getting an email from someone after I'd posted, like, I think I just left Barry's or something. I was all sweaty and I was like, oh, you know, great work. Blah, blah, blah. And I got an email being like, you can't, you know, what are you doing? And I was like, no, look, you don't get it. Just honestly, just leave it. And people do they want to see what you're like outside 100%. Of work.
And also they, you know, it's why Disney is so successful. People love a story. Like people love you documenting your journey from where you are, where you've been, where you are now and where you're going. But I have to change topics slightly. Yeah. I am going to put this down, so it's absolutely not scripted. My God. Okay. Nothing you need to worry about. We've talked about all the highs. Yeah. Selling some of London's most luxurious homes, 381,000 followers. Yeah. They're the highs. And we've spoken on previous podcasts about our highs. There are also lows. Yeah. And, you know, something we've spoken about previously, mental health and, you know, the importance of focusing on yourself, and we've had previous conversations before, and as an example that I'll pick up, which you've put on your socials, what's your work-life balance? How do you manage that, the negative side of things, which people probably don't see?
Yeah, well, look, the truth is, sometimes I don't. The truth is, you know, you can do as much manifesting and positive talk and self-help books and early workouts as you can physically fit in, but sometimes you get to the point where you can't do it anymore. And look, I don't know how deep we want to go with this, but I've had plenty of struggles in the past where I've really doubted myself. I get imposter syndrome all the time, like where I think I'm not good enough and I can't do things. And, you know, even doing this podcast today, manageable, but I get here and the first thing I think is, oh God, you know, what if I suddenly forget everything I know and then everyone's going to know I'm a fraud and I'm not actually good at what I do. And it's all rubbish. It's just your mind talking to you. So, I mean, the only advice I can give you is to try as hard as you can to flip your mindset and not let those thoughts take over. So one thing I always preach is I do a lot of journaling. And when I only started journaling about 2 years ago, and you feel like an idiot when you start because you are literally writing to yourself. It's the weirdest thing. But then what starts to happen, like now when I sit down and I journal, it's insane. You start writing and you'll look at your watch and 10 minutes have passed and you've written things that you didn't even know were in your head. It is crazy. And then it just allows you to sort of go through those and organize them. But in terms of work-life balance, I don't always have it. Like when I did my big trade last year, I left a family holiday 3 days early to go and do the final, close. Yeah. Which, obviously the wife was buzzing about, and I have to make it up to her, which costs me more money, but not even worth doing the deal in the first place. But so it's not always there. And we had a chat when we were at one of my listings in Hampstead the other week, and I'd massively burnt out. I'd just been taking on way too much, and I burnt out. And my main goal for this year is to try and have some sort of balance. Look, within reason. If it's a £60 million deal, it's got to be done, unfortunately. Yeah. And I don't think that mindset of mine will ever change. But there are things that don't have to be done instantly. And we're so used to doing things instantly. And I think if you take on too much, it's a false economy, because you just burn yourself out and then you're dead to everyone for a week.
Yeah, because one of the things I saw on your Instagram, you woke up, got in the shower, got changed, ready to go to work, and it was 1 a.m.
Yeah. That happened.
And I think
that's a true story.
How do you, crazy, right?
Yeah.
But like, obviously your clients know that you're building a business, you're building a private office. So surely they understand if you say, listen, after X time, or I'm going away for a week, they understand. Surely.
They do. They 100% do. And I don't think this is a criticism of the client. I think it's a criticism of me. I've got very severe ADHD. Like anyone that knows about ADHD, they grade it in 4 forms out of 9. I have 3 9s and an 8. So I'm like super ADHD. And and I know that word gets banded around so much at the moment, but I am, legitimately incredibly, but I've got more of a hyperactivity side than deficit. And what that means is some of the side effects are perfectionism, always feeling like you haven't done enough, not knowing when to switch off, struggling to sleep. And so all of these things, unfortunately, I get. And the waking up at 1 a.m. and getting fully dressed wasn't a highlight of mine for my recent life, but it's not the first time I've done it. I've done it a few times, and I think when things like that start happening, I'm quite good at realizing it's quite obvious that's happened and resetting. But yeah, it's so difficult, because ADHD, I say it's like a superpower. It makes you incredible at what you do, but it's also so draining at times, because you just can't switch off. So what would you, because obviously there is very much a negative side of how hard we work and how committed we are, and leaving your family holiday. What would you advise to a 21-year-old starting an industry? Like they ask us, how do we get into real estate? In order to not burn out, because ultimately when you burn out, you're not a benefit to anyone. You're not. But I would say at 21, you're not burning out. I'd say, the reason I'm probably burning out now is because I'm 38. I've got 3 kids and a beautiful, fantastic, but very demanding wife. So that's probably why I'm burning out, right? And I'm trying to balance, I'm so conscious of, I want to stay in shape. I want to earn money. I want to do deals. I want to be successful in my career. I want to go to my kids' assemblies and make sure they're happy. I want to see my parents, because I don't know how much longer I've got them for. So I'm trying to balance all these plates. And I think it's mad that like between the ages of like 30 and 50, you have got so much going on. It's just absolutely bonkers. So I'd say, yes, think about balance, think about taking time for yourself. But I would also say that as much as I believe in a lot of this self-help and, value in mental health, I'd also say if you're 21, get on with it. And just, you've got time to graft, assuming you don't have wife, kids, commitments. At 21, I was living at home, had a on-off girlfriend. She thought we were fully on. And I was just constant, So, and I think while you've got that luxury, you've got to double down on it. And then you start to take your breaks or your time as you get older, when you've got clients for life, when you're in that position where you've got clients for life. But leaving a family holiday, sometimes it's not ideal, but sometimes it had to be done. It was a new client. I couldn't really just call them up and say,
Yeah, I'm not there.
Sorry, can't be there.
It's interesting, is it? Because, you know, a lot of people reach out and they say, oh, you've got the best job in the world. Like, you know, you're seeing the best assets in London and across the globe. You know, you're selling multi-million-pound real estate, you're making good money and all the rest. But they don't see sometimes the late nights, the early mornings, the hard conversations, you know, telling clients bad advice. And that's the stuff that sometimes isn't shown on social.
Yeah.
But I think it's more acceptable now that people want to know those stories.
Yeah.
And they understand it. And it goes hand in hand with the mental health side. One question that I'm super interested in is that, and me and Benji spoke about it last time, only over the last 2 years have we started to do transactions now over £10 million. And everyone says, oh, you know, within 2 or 3 years, I'd love to be selling £10 million. And that took us, well, a decade, just under. When was your first £10 million sale? And how long into your career then was it?
Well, I think you beat me, actually. I think when was it? It was about 5 years ago. What am I now? 38. Started at 17, 18, 20 years. So yeah, I think you beat me to it. I think I was like 14, 15 years in.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And that shows, isn't it? Yeah. You know, it was never...
Just get so frustrated when you hear
an overnight process.
It doesn't happen.
This sofa is some of the better agents in the industry. And it's taken, 15 years?
Look, it is relative to the market you work in, right? Like, obviously, I was working in a market where you didn't see those sorts of values, you know, so I was working in what we call like a constant market. So Islington, Hackney, which is like end users, trading homes, cap values are like 5, 6. So my volume was huge, but my top capital value wasn't. It's a double-edged sword. I would, and going off a bit tangent now, but I would probably advise someone personally, if we go back to the advice starting out, to probably, as much as they want to work in this luxury market, I would probably advise them to work in a fast-paced end-user market first.
Great advice.
Before they come into PCL.
Yeah.
Because the problem with PCL is pretty much at all times, or certainly for the last decade, there's a lot of stock. There's not many buyers. There's lots of agents. Yes, you can hit the £10 million sales, but my God, it is hard. Like, it's not like any other market I've worked in. I was used to, you know, because I only really came into PCL the last 2-3 years. Yeah. I was north and east. Yes, I got pulled into places because of Instagram, but in terms of directly dealing, it was probably only the last 2-3 years. Yeah. And it is a tough market, even for the best agents out there, because there's just, it's simple fundamentals. There's a lot of supply, there's lower than you would like demand, and there's so much competition, especially with so many brokers now and people being on their own and everyone being, you know, good agents and a strong option for people.
Also, I was going to say, and I know obviously we've said that it takes time, but is there also an element, and obviously we're sitting here on the brokerage side, you're obviously in, you know, a great corporate company. Do you think there is also a slight element whereby when you're in the corporate world, you are given a patch, a box that you have to operate within, and even if you perhaps have the talent. So for example, I think one of the reasons why it took me so long to do my first 10 million sale was because I was capped up to £5 million for 7 of those years. Do you think that plays a role in it?
100%. Yeah. And it, you know, I could talk forever about how backwards the UK system is. Yeah. It is mental. You know, I fully believe in a broker model, which is why I'm quite unique in that, yes, I'm in a corporate, but my team are a brokerage within a corporate, which is really unusual to have because I believe that's the way agency's going. And yeah, you're spot on. You know, personally, I don't want to go too far here, but I'm not even sure of the value of shop fronts anymore. You know, I think it's just good people. I'd rather have less people that are brilliant than more people that aren't. And I think as an industry, we're moving that way, no question, which is why, as I say, again, I've modeled my team as a brokerage. So trying to argue that you get the best, which I genuinely believe that you get corporate, you get brokerage, you get work ethic, you get independent, you get social media, et cetera, et cetera. A little plug there. I'm sorry. These guys are great too. So yeah, and I think they will realize that, corporates, and they are slowly realizing that. Even before I set up private office, which was partly triggered by that, the fact that I was being asked to list things all over London and I was in an area, I did have that unique situation. So if I was in Chelsea, I could list it and do it. You got to follow the client.
Yeah,
you have to
the clients don't normally own assets everywhere.
Yeah.
They don't want to be passed from pillar to post. And then so we haven't spoken about the market at all, which I actually quite like because the market's really bloody boring. But looking forward and the change that's happening over the last couple of years with the emergence of the brokerage model, how do you see that playing out in terms of, you know, a company like ours, DDRE, which is now having an impact in the market, top end. Well, how do you see the future with brokerage, you know, the corporate world? How's that going to play out?
Well, I think personally, you know, I will be
careful
so careful how much I say here, but I think if there was a corporate that was willing to go full brokerage, it would be so powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of time before someone does that and someone makes that leap.
Yeah.
That could be a powerhouse. I mean, we've seen it with some firms already that have had, you know, good mixed results depending on who you speak to. But I just think it's definitely the way forward because it is how it's what's best for the client.
Yeah.
You know, it is what's best for the client to have, you know, not to have a situation where they instruct a local team and they're only working with that local team and they have no idea of the quality of that team and the exposure and how it's going to be handled. So I think our industry needs to massively level up in terms of how we deal with transactions, how real estate is run in the UK. But that, you know, that could be a long time.
Yeah. Well, personal branding and AI technology, you know, I've always said that the people who can distribute, you know, data to the widest, you know, audience are the people who are going to win. And that's why we actually also start to see younger generations who do have influence selling products that they've never even known about. You know, we took Prime, for example, you know, on the last one where, you know, mass followings, and suddenly they can start a drink in one of the hardest markets to saturate and it's done, you know. So yeah, it's super interesting for the future, but it's really nice just to find, again, a bit similar story to us of uncertainty at start of career, hard work, consistency, you know, has led to the position that you're in now, you know, beautiful wife, kids, you know, home, multiple properties I think you own as well, don't you? And hopefully that inspires people. And I think it certainly is inspiring. And I'm sure there's lots of people in there, you know, who will want to be part of your journey.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So the fourth plug or fifth plug of it, people that are watching, where do they find you?
At Grant J. Bates on all socials.
Love that.
And you show the negative side of it as well. It's not just when you sell things, it's reality, right? It's who you are. You see what you get. And I think that's can be hard to find in this industry.
Thank you, bro. I really appreciate it. You guys are nice too. I like you.
Well, no, look, it's been excellent to have you on. Like, we really appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone else watching has found some immense value. So thank you. Where are you off to now? What does the afternoon look like?
So I've got to somehow do a Teams call.
Yeah.
While I'm trying to get somewhere. So I need to think how I can do that safely. And then I've got to go to Hackney and then I'm home.
Love that.
And I've got to sweep up all my emails. So yeah.
Love that. Mate, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.